See, this is why I go live and practice these things, because apparently the sound isn't working. What? Okay, so we're gonna have some fun with this. I'm gonna rewind just a little bit. Thank you guys on YouTube for telling me that. I appreciate that. So now we're back. Go figure. Okay, so I'm gonna come back again and talk a little bit about that. And it's something, there's very few things more embarrassing than going live and having the microphone not turned on. Music teachers should know. That's all right. We'll get past this. So we're talking about the types of instruments. The first one is the flute. The second one is the clarinet, and then the trumpet, which has a little bit of a smaller mouthpiece. And the cool thing about so I'll kind of go through them. Flute, there's no reeds. It's just embouchure that you use to blow across kind of a hole. If you imagine like a pop bottle kind of blowing across, only it's much more refined and sounds much better. And you have a lot more versatility. Clarinet, you actually have a reed, and so the reed vibrates, and that's what creates the sound. Then we also have the trumpet, which mouthpiece goes across your mouth like this, and you get kind of a sound to make the trumpet go. That's also got 3 valves on it. And then, of course, you have your trombone, which is also another buzzing instrument, but the mouthpiece is a little bit bigger. And then slide to help you change your notes. And then there's kind of the crossover between the trumpet and the trombone. That's the baritone, bigger mouthpiece, still the 3 valves, though. And then the big granddaddy is the tuba, the bass instrument, the one that's you need in every band, because otherwise it's like having all of your music play on a cell phone speaker, no subwoofer to give you all that good solid bass sound. So now each one of those instruments have their own role. The tuba is that big bass sound that we need in every single band. The baritone and the trombone tend to be kind of like the tenor voices. They fill out a lot of the chords. And then, of course, the trumpets are usually a much more melodic type instrument, as are the clarinets and the flutes. So, but it's interesting that we say that's usually the roles that they play, but it's not always the roles that they play. In fact, we've actually had in the past students who play flute suddenly realize that they're actually playing the bass line. It's really weird. But every kid gets a chance to experience everything, or every part of the music on their instruments. We also have, of course, as I was mentioning before when I didn't have my microphone on, we have stage band instruments. We also have steel pan instruments and string ensemble instruments, but those are extra ensembles. The ones for the concert band, the first ones that students would have a choice through: flute, clarinet, trumpet, trombone, baritone, and tuba. Those are the big ones. And then in later years, saxophone and percussion and so on and so forth. So those are the main ones, and what I've usually had happen for parents is they say, "What? But my kid's been doing this for so long. Can we get that involved?" Usually the answer is yes, but we just have to try to make sure that the band, of course, is very well balanced. It would be a tragedy if a band had 12 flute players, 3 clarinet players, and 1 trombone player, no tubas, or anything like that. That would be a very strange sounding band. So I try to help every student find the right instrument for themselves, while also help make the entire ensemble feel particularly successful as well. So if you're just joining and kind of laughing at me because I didn't have my microphone to begin with, kind of talk to you a little bit about how you can get involved in today's session. The Q&A that I've got going on right now is on YouTube, it's on Twitch, and it is on Facebook page. With all of those 3 locations, you can jump straight into the chat. In fact, it was the chat that saved my bacon and told me to turn my microphone on. You can also join the Zoom and therefore get involved by way of voice if you wanted to as well. In any of those locations, you can ask me a question, and I'd be quite happy to answer them. It's quite possible that I already have them in my list of questions I'm going to go through today, but if I haven't thought of something, it's very possible. You can certainly jump into the chat and just say, "Hey, answer this one for me, Windsor," and I would be very happy to do so. In the meantime, we are just going to carry on. All right, so when do we choose what instrument our student will play? The answer to that question is a little bit more challenging this year because we don't necessarily know how the school year is even going to start. And so the idea is that we're going to try to get every single student to have a chance to try out these instruments at the very beginning of the school year. The plan is to have all of the instruments laid out, every student try them out, the whole disinfection procedure as we usually do, which is none of it's unusual for us. We always go through the disinfection procedure, whether there's a concern about illness spread or not. We still go through that procedure to make sure that our students are safe regardless. So it's just now we're a little bit more aware of it. That's the only difference. But we will actually have all the students try out all the instruments and see if there's one that they prefer. And then once they do that, we'll actually get a chance to do an instrument rental night where you would have, and the instrument rental night quite likely is going to be an online instrument rental night, not dissimilar to this Q&A, because Long and McQuaid is our main company that we use for our rentals. And they are planning on doing something a little bit different this year. If you've ever had a student in NDC's music program before, Long and McQuaid has come out to the school. That hasn't happened, or that's not going to be happening this year. This coming year, it will be an online version instead. We actually just worked that out with our representative at Long and McQuaid this morning, so that's kind of a cool thing. Cool little development for us. The nice thing about it is that you can get your instrument fairly quickly and have everything processed online. You don't have to come into the school. It'll be a very safe procedure for getting your instruments out to you. So here's probably what's going to happen at the beginning of the year. We let you try out the instruments while at the school building, however that ends up looking, and of course we'll know what those details are a little bit later. Once you've had a chance to try out all the instruments, you're going to find one that seems to kind of speak to you a little bit more than the others. And once you've got that choice, that's the one you're going to rent. Now, the good news is that you are not stuck on that instrument, that if you would like, you try out, say you choose the flute, and the flute was definitely not the right choice for you, but you tried it, you gave it a good solid month of trying, because that's how long it's going to take before you can really tell. And after that month, you're like, no, not the flute, I'm a trumpet player, or vice versa, or whatever the case may be. You're not tied to that instrument for the entire year. We let you try them out, and if it doesn't work, then we make an alteration. And we try to do this as best we possibly can so that every student not only feels successful, but loves what they're doing. And if we can do that, then we're doing what we're supposed to be doing as a music program. Question coming in from Carter McGinnis, can we do saxophone? That question is a really tough one for me because saxophone is an extremely popular instrument, and they're also very powerful. That being said, if a student already has a saxophone, then I'm not going to make them rent another one unless they really, really wanted to. My personal preference is for students who want to play saxophone to play those instruments in a stage band and learn on a different instrument. And part of that is also because of what the saxophone plays in concert band. That generally speaking, beginning band music for saxophone, it's kind of boring. It's not exactly the most interesting music. They don't play melodies, they don't play bass lines, they play middle of the road stuff, and it's not rhythmically challenging. And the last thing I want is for a saxophone player to be bored, because if you're bored, you're not loving it. So what I try to do is I have my saxophone players play in the stage band where they do play the melody, and it is interesting stuff, and it can be a little bit more uniquely and entertainingly challenging. In concert band, what I prefer the saxophone players do is that they play a flute or a clarinet or something along those lines, because if they play those instruments, they are very similar in the fingerings to the saxophone, gives them a chance to also play something that's actually musically interesting in concert band and play something musically interesting in stage band on a saxophone. That's the preference for what I would have for people who would like to play saxophone, but it's not the only way that we can do things. And so what I usually say is, if you're in that kind of a boat, if you're thinking about that kind of thing, that's the best time to come and reach out to Mr. Windsor, aka me. And I would be quite happy to work with you on a solution that really fits your needs and keeps you entertained and loving the music that you're doing. That's the goal. You have to love it, and so we're going to find a way of making that happen. So thank you very much, Carter, for that question. I appreciate that one a lot. So choose your instrument at the beginning of September, and we'll do an instrument rental night fairly early in the year as well, so you still have a really good solid chance to try things out as best as you possibly can. All right, let's get on to the next question that I usually get from people. It is, how do you get the instruments? So this question is answered in a variety of different ways. You get basically two choices for where you're going to get those instruments from. Choice number one, the one that I prefer recommending to people, is Long and McQuaid. And it's because Long and McQuaid has provided us with great service in the past, and they also have this really cool feature, and we would go over this during the instrument rental night, of course, but they have this really cool feature where you can get an insurance policy for basically $10 for the entire year. So if something untoward happens to the instrument and you weren't expecting, then you have this insurance policy in place to make sure that you still have a working instrument throughout your educational life as a music student. And so that is, and Notre Dame can't compete with that kind of an insurance policy. That's just fantastic that they have that kind of process. A long time ago, and I mean years ago, I did have one student who had a trombone have a slight malfunction out the back end of a moving minivan. And thankfully, because they had an insurance policy in place, there was some help that Long and McQuaid was able to provide without too much pain. It wasn't, of course, the ideal circumstance. We never want you to turn your trombone into road pizza, but if you do need to feel confident that your instrument's going to be working for you, and Long and McQuaid has that plan that does that. Now, the challenge, though, is that Long and McQuaid also has some instruments that are rather expensive to rent, like a tuba, or like a bari saxophone for some of my older students, or something to that effect. If you are looking at renting a fairly expensive instrument, I try to keep a fleet of those instruments at Notre Dame Collegiate that I rent for a much lower amount. And the reason why is because we want to make sure that music is financially accessible to every single student. And so we do the best that we possibly can. I simply cannot compete with Long and McQuaid's flute and clarinet and trumpet and trombone instrument rental rates, so I don't. But I can help out families with regards to renting tubas. And in fact, many cases, what we have done and what we will have to do this coming year is make sure that a student has a tuba at home and a tuba at the school, if that's the instrument they play, and that they don't share. That's a kind of a really big point for this coming year, that there is not going to be any sharing of instruments, that you have your own tuba. And it doesn't cost. It costs a fraction of what it does at Long and McQuaid. So the getting of the instruments, that'll start off on the instrument rental night. And the way that it's going to work this year, but through the instrument rental night, as I understand it, is there's going to be an online form that you can fill out. One of the features on that form is to either go pick it up at Long and McQuaid yourself, or you can have it shipped to your home or to the school. Either way, you don't have to go places. Long and McQuaid's been fantastic about that, and the instruments just come straight to us. And that's kind of been the arrangement we've had for years, and no illness is ever going to slow that down for us. So that's the strategy for getting the instruments. Then we can get on to the next question. The cost of the instruments. So of course, one of the biggest considerations that we have, music is not exactly the least expensive option that your students can possibly take, but we try to make it as affordable as possible, because we do have a number of families who simply don't want to spend thousands of pounds, thousands of dollars, and we don't want you to spend that either. Generally speaking, a flute rental and a clarinet rental and trumpet rental, the smaller instruments, their rentals tend to run in the neighborhood, actually under usually around $150 for the whole year. That's like $15 a month. That's 3 Starbucks coffees a month. So that's not bad. That's actually a really, really good rate. Same thing kind of goes for baritone. It's a little bit more expensive. Saxophones are a tiny bit more expensive. Tubas are the big ones, of course. And so that's why we offer up a different program through Notre Dame Collegiate. But if you're renting from Long and McQuaid, they have very competitive and very reasonable rental rates. Now, you can rent it for the whole school year, or you can rent it for a month. It's more expensive if you rent it by the month, but so I obviously recommend that you try for the whole school year. And they also have this kind of cool little rent-to-own type idea as well, where after a few years of actually renting the instrument, you've basically purchased out the buying value of the instrument. You now actually own the instrument. So you'd have to talk to Long and McQuaid about exactly how that structure works, but that is a possibility as well. In terms of the rental costs for tubas, the rental costs for tubas are, through Notre Dame Collegiate in particular, I believe they're going to be for this coming year in the neighborhood of $275 for the year. So again, that's $27.50 per month for a $4,500 instrument. So that's a ridiculously fantastic rate. That's actually probably less expensive than we should be charging at Notre Dame, but we do it because we want you guys to be able to play the instrument without having to worry about the financial issues. So that's the basic cost of the instrument. Of course, there are some other costs that you might want to consider, including reeds. Generally speaking, if you're playing a smaller reeded instrument, then you're looking at about $20 for a box of reeds. And a good student can get through the year with only a few boxes. You don't have to go crazy with them. Then there's some maintenance supplies as well. And so those maintenance supplies, they aren't exceptional, but I like to think of it for the students that if they take care of their instrument, then it reduces the cost of using the instruments later on. And it's also really, really good experience for taking care of something that's expensive, so that when it comes time for them to say, I don't know, take care of a car, they've already got some good experience behind them about how maintenance works. So it's a good teaching opportunity for students, as well as us trying to make sure that it is as inexpensive as possible for you. So there you go. That's basically the cost of the instruments. Kind of carry on from there. Of course, if you have any questions about anything that I haven't covered here, please feel free to put them into the chats, YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch. And can we change our instruments if our first choice doesn't work out? The answer to that one is an absolute 100% yes. 100%. I would want you to make sure that you're playing an instrument that you're going to love. If you're not going to love the instrument, I don't want you to be playing it. We'll switch it out. We'll find the right solution for you. It's important that you love the music that you're playing. And we'll play music that's going to be interesting. We're going to be playing some pop tunes. We're going to be playing some particularly jazzed up tunes and some loud bombastic stuff that's a lot of fun. We did How to Train Your Dragon one year. We're going to play lots of great music, but you got to love the instrument that you're playing it with too. So we will go through our best efforts to make sure that that's not a problem for you. All right. So next one. Can you play two different instruments? This kind of goes back to Carter's question just a little bit. You are certainly welcome to play two different instruments, but we recommend that you do that in two different ensembles so that you can keep yourself with a steady learning experience in each of the ensembles. So I have, as an example, this year, I had a grade 7 student who played flute, played violin, and also played in the steel pan ensemble. So he actually ended up playing 3 different instruments in 1 year. And the only ensemble he didn't really get involved in was the stage band, which is perfectly fine. I mean, 3 ensembles, that's a good chunk of commitment as it is. So, but I do have some students who would say, you know what, I want to play clarinet in this group, but I want to play saxophone in this group, and I want to play the steel pans, and I want to play cello. You're welcome to play all of those instruments if you want. I just usually recommend that you try them out in different ensembles so that you get the best experience you possibly can with them. So we can carry on to the next question. Let's see here. Okay, this one's kind of a big and important one. So how is COVID-19 impacting music making? It's going to have an impact. Let's be serious about this. A lot of the research that I'm been reading is kind of still making its way through things. There's some research that is suggesting that playing an instrument is not the cause of spread, and that actually includes some issues that came around with choirs, that it wasn't actually the singing that caused the spread of COVID-19 as it was so much the people who are just simply being really close together, you know, having water cooler conversations while they're waiting for their choir rehearsal to begin. So those are the issues that aren't just music related. Those are issues that are school-wide related, and they're going to be dealt with before September rolls around, before we have the return. So we're going to work under the presumption that all of those kinds of procedures, all of those kinds of considerations are already taken care of, and therefore music instruction can happen. But guaranteed that the social distancing, all of the different kinds of things that can cause transmission of infection, all of those things are going to be managed, and the cleanliness of the instrument is going to be a fairly important point for me, as it is every year. So by all means, know that that's not going to be the main issue. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we are doing is making sure that any chance that there is for COVID-19 to get in the way of things is going to be reduced by having the right tools. So we're going to be searching for the right tools to prevent anything from happening, making sure spacing happens the way it's supposed to, and so that people can still, it's important that when you're playing the music that you feel comfortable where you are. If you're not comfortable where you are, you're not going to be comfortable doing whatever it is you're doing, whether that's music or otherwise. So we are going to make that an absolute priority inside our music classrooms. So please don't fret. COVID-19 is not going to stop us from making music. It's just going to be a different way of looking at it. That's the only thing. So in terms of the music making, we still have lots of opportunities for students to do things on their own in music. As a matter of fact, we have festival solos, and we've had a number of students who just simply do solos as some of the things that they do. It's an optional thing for grade sevens. They don't have to do it if they don't want to, but there is ways of doing music making without having to worry about the social distancing impacting it. As a matter of fact, what I prefer in my band setup is that the students are actually spaced out anyway, so that they have to listen to each other a little bit more attentively anyway, developing a much more deep collaborative experience by doing so. So that's going to be the way that we're going to be looking at things next year anyway. So we are considering that, and we're making sure that it's a top priority for us. Next question. All right, so Notre Dame Collegiate is one of the most unique music programs in the province simply because of the number of different types of courses and offerings that we have at Notre Dame. So one of those ones, of course, is the one that happens during the regular schedule, Notre Dame Collegiate's concert bands. And so these are the regular traditional bands that we've all been familiar with in North America. So it's not unusual, but it's also important that you know that those classes are actually during the schedule. They're during the regular timetable. So it'll be during either block one. This past year, it was in block one. The year before that, it was in block four. But it's inside the schedule. So you don't have to worry about those courses happening after school. They don't. There are some offerings that do happen after school. They include the stage band. They have a fun name. They're called the Woodshedders. There's a whole story behind that, but I'm not going to get into that one right now. That's one I'd like to share with the students. We also have Panorama, which is our steel pan ensemble. And we have the St. Cecilia String Ensemble as well. And so those are the three main other types of music course offerings that we have at the school. We also have our self-directed learning blocks where we can have students explore different types of music, in different ways, so like digital music or something to that effect. History of rock and roll has been one of our sessions there. We also have music ministry at our school, which is more of a choral offering. So people who want to, students who want to sing a lot, they can get involved in that music ministry, and they are very active. They're doing something all year long. So we have a lot, and we really are the only, I'm going to say pretty much the only rural Alberta school, I think, that has a steel pan ensemble. I'm willing to be told I'm wrong, but we're pretty darn close to the only one. And we are also one of the very few schools that have a string ensemble program. Whether it's rural or urban, it doesn't really matter. We're one of the very few ones that actually have that. So it is quite a unique music program in that we offer a lot of opportunities for your students. Beyond those, we also have opportunities to volunteer in town with the High River Gifted Music Society. We also have honor band opportunities that some of our students have gotten involved in. And we also have a number of opportunities for students to do solo work through festivals or just for fun. So I actually worked with a student earlier on today who's doing a song called One Man Band, and for whatever reason I can't remember what the band's name is that does it, but they've chosen that particular song because it's one that speaks to them, and they wanted to be able to play that along with that with their clarinet. So these are some of the different offerings and opportunities that we give students at Notre Dame. And with that, I'm just going to give you kind of a quick little video here to take a peek at to see a little bit more about some of these offerings and some of the things that have happened in the past. For example, you can see our startup clinics, and you'll see a little bit about our steel pans and strings. And so just to take a quick little break for you guys to see this. This video is specifically so you can see some of those different offerings that we have. All right. All right, and we're back. So we got our next question up here. We're just going to do a little bit of a switcheroo here. There we go. Gotcha. All right. So one of the things that you will have noticed in that video, if you were watching along, was the marching band, and that is something that the grade sevens will most definitely be doing next year. Whether it's rain, snow, or shine, if we've had it in the past, and all of those, and I'll be able to get into that a little bit more detail here as well for you. But we do have our next questions up here for you now, and they are talking about some of those extracurricular ensembles that we have. So it's not just the concert bands that we have at our school. We also have stage bands as well. So when it comes to the stage bands, what are the kinds of instruments that we have in stage band? And so the quick and easy answer to that is a lot of the rock band type of instruments you'll find in there, like the drum set, like a keyboard or piano, like the bass guitar. But one of the things that we don't tend to see oftentimes in stage band, one of the things we don't oftentimes see in stage band is the, oh my goodness, I'm having a problem with some of the technology here. We're just getting a little slow on the stream. There we go, that's a bit better. Okay, so one of the instruments that we get in the stage band is not usually the electric guitar. We usually take what the electric guitar would play in a rock group and split it up into some of the other instruments, like a trumpet, like the trombone, and like the 3 different sizes of saxophone, the alto, the tenor, and the bari. And so those are the main instruments that we'll find in a stage band. Now, those don't have to be the only ones. In fact, I've had stage bands where there was a flute player in it, there was a French horn player in it, there was a baritone player in it. We make it work, and mostly because the students love the music that we play. So some of the music we played in there has been Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band's old time rock and roll. We've done Don't Stop Believin' by Journey. We've done Sing 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 with a Swing. We've done a lot of different types of tunes that you won't necessarily hear in a concert band on a regular basis. So that's the kind of stuff that you're going to find in the stage band. Let's flip over now into what you'll find in steel pans. So a steel pan ensemble, if you're not familiar with what the steel pan ensemble is, I think the circulars, Caribbean drums, and they're not set up the same way as a piano is. The piano actually tends to have the white black keys kind of thing, and they kind of go from left to right, whatever. They tend to go left to right, but the notes on the steel pan, they go in what we call a circle of fifths, and so it's quite a different instrument. But they come in four different sizes at our school. We have the tenors, which I oftentimes call the lead pans because they usually play the lead part. We have the seconds, which are actually 2 sets of pans that are side by side. They need 2 pans in order to make one instrument. It's also true for the double guitars. They're not actually guitars. They just play a lot of the same stuff that a guitar would play. And then, of course, the bass pans, which are the really big ones, and there's 6 of these oil barrels that have been hammered out in such a way that they actually make beautiful music. And so those are some of the instruments that you'll find in the steel pan ensemble. And you don't need to have experience in percussion or on the piano in order to play this. You actually don't have to have music experience in order to play in the steel pan ensemble. You just have to have a love of music, and we'll teach you all of the skills that you would need to get involved in that ensemble if that's something that you wanted to do. So that's the steel pan ensemble. We can get now into the string ensemble. So what are the main instruments that we find in the string ensemble? So this is probably kind of a no-brainer, but just to be clear about it, there's basically only 3 instruments that we tend to see in a string ensemble. They include the violin, which is usually a little bit of a smaller one, the very underrepresented viola, which is one of my favorite instruments. It looks like a big violin, but it plays a different set of notes, and it is a very warm, kind of a lower voiced type of instrument in between the violin and the 3rd instrument, which is the cello. And the cello is the one that tends to sit on the ground, and you kind of have to hug around it in order to play it. There is another instrument that we sometimes see in the string ensemble, that's the double bass, which is one that you have to stand to play because it's that big. But generally speaking, for a string ensemble, the only instruments that we require are viola, one of my favorites, violin, and cello. And so those are the instruments that you're going to see most often in the string ensemble. So the question is, when do each of these things happen? Well, if you recall, the concert band usually happens during the school day. No, not usually, it does. It happens all the time during the school day. However, for the string ensemble, the stage band, and the steel band, have those ones rehearse outside of the school day. And so it changes from year to year, but typically what we have happen is the steel bands rehearse in the evenings. And so they'll rehearse from usually around 6 to 7:30 or something to that effect. We also have time available for us immediately after school for a stage band. So this past year, stage band happened on Wednesdays. A couple years ago, stage band happened on Tuesdays after school. It kind of depends on what the needs are of the students that particular year. Same thing goes for the string ensemble. The bonus to the string ensemble is that it's one ensemble for all grade levels, grade 7 right through to grade 12. So you are going to see some grade 12ers in the string ensemble playing along with the grade 7ers. Same thing goes for the steel pans. Now the stage band ensemble, that's a bit different. That's mostly grade 7, 8, and 9 only. But they do happen immediately after the school day, or in the case of the steel pans, usually in the evening. And we try to adjust those schedules as we need to make sure that students who want to get involved in sports can as best as possible. Sometimes we don't get everything, but we always work things out with the coach to make sure that things work out well for the students. And it's important to know that what we get for stage bands and steel pans and strings are included in our marks. And so they can, in many ways, be positive impacts on your overall average at the school. And so we do try to make sure that we make those classes as accessible as possible. So that's when they, generally speaking, rehearse. So then this comes to the next question. What about the regular band class, the concert band class that's supposed to happen during the day? Is there ever anything that happens after school for those classes? The answer is yes. There are a few things, but there's not much. There's a Christmas concert. There is a parade. And then there is usually one overnight trip, which in the past few years has been simply to Airdrie and to Calgary, the Airdrie for their festival and Calgary to visit Studio Bell. So that basically means, and I guess the year-end concert. Can't forget the year-end concert. We did have this past year one extra day for startup sessions, and we are going to try and do that same thing again this year. So that sounds to me like a total of 5 extra days off outside of the regular school day for the entire year. It's not a lot. It's basically once every 2 months you're going to have something that your student is going to do outside of the school day. And it is a performance class, so there will be performances, and that's kind of the expectation that goes with it. With that, we ask that you guys can get involved in those after-school hour activities. You can be a chaperone on one of our trips. You can help out with the Fine Arts Parents Association. You can also just help move things around the building when it comes time to one of our concerts. For example, setting up our tables and chairs and our band shell and so on and so forth. There's a lot of work that gets into getting these concerts set up so that they look and sound fantastic for you. And then, of course, the most important thing that you could do for your student is be at those performances that your student is performing in. They want to share their love of music with you. They want to share their skills and talents. So that's it. That's all you have to do is make sure that you're there for those 2 concerts. And then if you can help out with those chaperoning duties, then we would love those extra helpers along with us. So then the question is, online learning through